Welcome back to AQS Let's Quilt. This is the second lesson of foundation piecing. So we sewed our blocks together and we removed the paper from the back side. And I will just give you a little tip. If you have little bits of paper, if you'll just take your fingernail and scratch right over the top of it, you'll find that it'll just pop right out of there for you. And then you just have to pull it off and throw it away. Okay, so the next step is for us to give this a good pressing. And I've pressed the seam allowance down the center. Oh, it looks like it, I guess I messed it up a little bit. I pressed it all one direction because the quilting that I'm going to do on this, I'm going to do in the seam line of the joining of the blocks. So here we go, and again we're just going to let the heat of the iron do the work and give us a good press. Now I'm using the Panasonic iron. This is the one just like I use at home, and I like it because it's got the points at both ends, and you just put it back in the cradle and it'll get all heated up again. Okay, so now the next step is we're going to measure our block so that we can cut the borders for the sides. And you know what? It's always wonderful when it comes out just right. It should be 12.5 inches, and it is 12.5 inches. So I need to cut 2 borders, and I cut these long to begin with. I'd like to tell you about these things we have sitting on our quilting cabinet, and this is by Tracy's Tables. But we have some other things that we're going to use this afternoon, and that is the mini clips. And I have 2 different sizes. I have the little bitty ones, and then I have the larger ones. So I can use either one of those. And you know, one of the things about our quilting is that we want to make sure that we have good light. And Vivalux is a sponsor of this program this time, and they have several products. This is a wireless chargeable lamp, and so you can make it have white light, warm light, and daylight. And I only hooked up one of these, but all of these lights come with a cord so that you can charge them with a USB port, or you can plug them in to recharge them. This is a light, if your machine didn't have enough light on it, that you could actually attach to your machine to add additional light on the machine. And they have a laser system, if you'd like to have a laser light to be able to stitch down. And this little thing is pretty interesting in that it is a lamp that has a white light, a green light. I'll start with the white light. So if you needed extra light and you just wanted to aim it somewhere, you could clip it on. Then let's go to green light, and you can use green. If you see how I've got this close to my colors here, if you wanted to be able to put your fabric in the right gradation according to the color value, green works on reds and red works on greens. Now I thought these two were pretty close, and I kept sort of trying to get those mixed up when I was working on them, but you can see with this color that this one is definitely darker than the second one. Interesting little light. And these are all by Vivalux. Okay, so I'm going to come back here and I'm going to measure my block, and it should be 12.5 inches, and by gum it is. And you know, that's one of the things that you'll see that is a benefit of using the foundation paper piecing, is that your blocks should be very accurate. Okay, so now I need to cut my borders. First thing I'll do is get rid of the selvages. Okay, so now I'm ready to cut my borders, and I measured them my block, and it's 12.5 inches. So I'll use my long ruler, and 12.5 will be right here. So I'm going to line one of the lines up on my ruler along the edge of my border. And now I just need to find 12.5 inches. And my fabric is doubled, so I'm cutting both at once. And so now I have my borders ready to sew on the sides of the block. I'm going to pin it on both ends. Okay, I have my 1/4 inch foot on my machine, and I'm using gray thread to sew this together because these all have a little bit of a gray feel to them. But Wonderfill is providing the thread, and they also sent colors that match the fabric. So if you were going to quilt this and do some fancy quilting to where you maybe wanted to use a contrasting color, you could use the lighter pink, or just let it disappear and do the darker pink. And the same thing with the teals. So this is all 50 weight cotton thread. Now we'll just make sure we got it all lined up. Okay, now before we can sew or cut the other 2 borders, we need to open up these borders and measure again. Before I do that, you know, I always tell you that it's always good to set those seams in there before we open our blocks up. And now that fabric will be warm and it'll just fold right over the edge a lot better. Okay, so now we can measure again. All right, and so we basically have added on the 2.5 inch strips, which it should measure 16.5 inches, and it does. So we'll cut our last 2 borders 16.5 inches. Well, the first thing we'll do is get rid of those selvages. Turn my ruler around and find 16.5. And I'm lining up one line of the ruler along the edge of my border and the other one on the half mark for 16.5 inches. So now I'm ready to pin the top and bottom borders on. Now this is a long enough stretch that I'm going to put a couple pins along this edge. Okay, now we're ready to sew. Okay, so now we have the borders all on, so it's time to press again. Set our seams. Now I'm going to put a piece of fleece underneath my pillow. So for right now, I've oversized this. I cut it a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to do a small amount of quilting. And I'm going to quilt here and around the edge of the border. And that'll be enough, but meanwhile, I'm going to just take a couple pins and put it so that it won't move on me. If you were going to do more quilting than this, then you probably would want to go ahead and do some basting. Quilting will almost always take up some fabric. Okay. Now, one thing I do when I do this stitching in the ditch like this is I slow my machine down. So if you have that capability, because sometimes you may want just to go plunk, 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 especially when we get here in the very center where we have lots of seam allowances coming together. So I'm trying to put that needle just right at the edge of that dark pink fabric. Okay, so now I'm just going to turn my pillow and sew right along the edge of the border. Okay, while I continue sewing around this border, we're going to hear a short word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
The secret to every great project is great lighting. You can have beautiful fabric, the best threads, but if you can't see what you are sewing, we all know what will happen. Vivilux lights and lasers are the only lights made by quilters for quilters. Look for Vivilux lights and lasers at your favorite independent sewing and quilt shop or online.
Okay, now we're ready to do trimming, and we can finish assembling our pillow. Now, one of the things that I'm doing as I do this trimming is I am trying to make sure that my corners are good and square. So I'm lining up on the edges of my pillow here to make sure that I have good 90-degree corners. Okay, so now we have our pillow top all set to go, And we're going to take another word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to work on assembling the back of the pillow and then putting it all together.
Nine Patch Fabrics has a wide variety of fabric, patterns, and notions. We offer quilt store quality fabric from manufacturers such as Moda, Robert Kaufman, Island Boutique, and more. Nine Patch Fabrics also features a variety of notions, including creative grids, rulers, sew line marking tools, and more. Visit Nine Patch Fabrics at ninepatchfabrics.com.
Okay, so I ask you to cut two 12 by 16.5. That's the width of our pillow, 16.5 inches. And then the reason I have you cut two pieces is that we're going to make an envelope style that you can just slide your pillow form in. And here's how we're going to do that. I've already finished one for you, but we will take the 16.5 inch side and choose either side. It doesn't make any difference. I used a print on the back, but you're going to fold it in 1/2 inch once, and then you're going to fold it in 1/2 inch again, and now we're going to stitch right along that inside fold. So I have one all done, and I'll do the other one, and then we'll be ready to assemble the pillow. So we're just going to sew about 1/8 inch inside that fold. We can go a little faster now too. Okay, we'll give that a little press. Get those stitches all set in there. Okay, so now to assemble the pillow. Let's see, we don't need our ruler anymore. We're going to put the pillow right side up and the backing right side to the pillow. Okay, the pieces that we just stitched are going to be the inside. So you're going to match the raw edges. Okay, and now the other one will be right sides to the other two corners. Okay, now you'll notice that I put my pins in the corners a little distance from the corner. In your handout, there is a template, but I'm going to show you how to do that so that if you really just want to measure it and trim, I promised you the decorator tip for making your pillow so that it wouldn't have the pokey corners that come out on pillows often. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure 1/2 inch in from the corner, and I'm going to mark that in both directions. All right, so now we're going to measure 4 inches along the edge of the quilt, of the pillow. So here's 4 inches, and now I'm going to connect that 1/2 inch dot right there, right here, with the 4 inch dot that I made on the side. Okay, there's that one. Now we're going to measure 4 inches. This ruler is 4.5 inches, in case you're wondering. That's why it's real easy to measure. And again, we're going to come from this 1/2 inch mark to my 4 inch mark. And I gave you that template, so if you just want to lay the template on here and trim it out. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to cut that out. So I'm going to come to my 4 inch mark here, the 1/2 inch mark, and we're just going to trim that away. And so now we're going to have a different sewing line, and we're going to do that for all 4 corners. So while I finish this up, we'll have one more word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll be ready to sew the pillow all together.
Tracy's Tables has all of your custom sewing table needs. Visit tracystables.com to see the complete line of unique tables, carts, and shelves. And all of Tracy's Tables are made in the USA.
Okay, so now you'll notice that I put clips around the edge of this, and that is because I don't want to leave any pins in here. We're going to be flipping this right side out, and it's really easy to get caught on one of those pins. So this way we know that all of the holding it together with the clips will hold it securely, and we don't have to have pins on the inside. Okay, so I have a 16-inch pillow form, and we want to make sure that it's filled nice and tightly inside our pillowcase. So this was 16.5 inches. I'm going to take a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around so it'll snug it in just a little bit. Okay, I think I can speed this up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to turn ever so slightly right where I did all that trimming. All right, now I am just going to do one thing before we flip our pillowcase right side out, and that is I'm going to sew a double row of stitching right here where the overlap on the pillow goes. So I'm just going to continue sewing right along here because that will be the pressure points. I'll do a little back stitch and we'll cut this thread. And now I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to do that same stitching again down this side. Okay, are you ready for the big reveal? Next thing I'm going to do though, I'm going to just do a little bit of grading right at those corners. Not clear down to the stitching, but we'll get rid of some of that both the fabric and the fleece. Okay, now we're ready to turn it inside out. Now I find that it's easiest if you stick your thumb in the pillowcase and turn it over your finger. And I'll go to the next corner and I'll do the same thing. Put my thumb inside and flip it over my corner. Now we'll go to the other side. Put my thumb in and flip it over my finger. Oh, see, there is a pin in there. I thought I got them all. So you can see it makes a nice little envelope style opening on the back of the pillow. And I'm just going to do a quick little press with that. Use my fingers to just kind of turn that back to the back side of the pillowcase. You can hear the steam. Just take just a little bit of steam to make it tame itself down and get the backing on the back side. Okay, so now as we get ready to put the pillow form inside the pillow, I just take my hand and take it all the way into the corner and get one end positioned in here. Because you need half the pillow in there to be able to put the other half in. So sometimes this is just a little manipulating. All right, so I have half of it in, and now I have to reach in here and grab the opening for the other half. So want to make sure you get the corners of your pillow tucked well into the corners of the cover here. That's one end. And so there is our finished foundation paper pieced pillow. Now, before you go, I want to remind you to go register for the prizes from our sponsors. We've got some great prizes from Tracy's Tables, Vivilux, Panasonic, 9 Patch Fabrics, and Wonderfill Threads. So there's lots of great things, but you have to register to win. Go to quiltweek.com/letsquilt and just scroll down until you see the register button, and it'll have the whole list of all the prizes they're giving away. And if you're not an AQS member yet, go to americanquilter.com and join AQS, the world's largest quilting membership organization in the world. And so now I want to invite you back next week because we're going to make this great tote bag. Pockets on the inside, paper piece pockets on the outside, big enough to hold 2 or 3 quilts for you to carry to your quilt retreats or to head off to the beach. And we're going to be using a jelly roll to make the foundation piece patchwork to go on the pockets. And I can't tell you, I've never seen anybody else who has as many jelly rolls as 9 Patch Fabrics. So if you don't have a jelly roll, go visit 9 Patch Fabrics. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. And we're going to make a tote bag with foundation paper piece pockets on it.